Good evening, everybody. It is 7:05 p.m. on Wednesday, April 16th. And I'm going to call the special meeting of the Wellington Capital Improvement Program Committee to order. Members present are Christian Mellos, Steph Summers, myself, James Marshall, Donald Latinjix, and that's in the room. Online, we have Jennifer McCoo, Melissa McKinnon, and Peter Bacon. So we have a quorum with 6 voting. All right, first up on the agenda is present to speak. There's nobody in the room, so if anybody online would like to say something, please identify yourself for the record and raise your hand, identify yourself for the record, and have your say. All right. Seeing no hands raised, we'll move on. There's another opportunity at the end of the meeting. First up, and you in the room have in your packets. You guys should receive it via email, the approval of the minutes for March 19th.
Move to approve the minutes of March 19th, 2025.
Do I have a second? That was you, Jen? Thank you. Moved by Steph Summers, seconded by Jen McCoo. Any discussion? Yeah, Lisa doing a wonderful job as always.
It really is good.
It's been a while since we looked at it.
I know it's a good refresher, wasn't it?
Yeah. Any comments online? All right, hearing none. Motion to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Peter? Peter, if you're there, you're muted. If not, I'm gonna do a roll call just for the sake of good practice.
Good idea.
All right, let's do a roll call. Myself, I'm an aye. Steph.
Steph Summers, aye.
Christina Milos, aye.
Jen?
Jen McCoo, aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
And Peter, I'm gonna give you one more chance. All right, Peter is having audio or technical issues or is unable to speak, so that's 5 yeas. Minutes are approved. That's the agenda. Thank you, everybody. All right, new business. First up, item 4A is review and discuss the CIP plan changes proposed since we approved this on the 19th. What you guys have, I sent it out a little earlier today. There's an updated copy of the plan as adjusted by the Board of Finance at their meeting on April 3rd for the public hearing. I think it's worthwhile just kind of walking through the process from when we approved it on the 19th and what changes were made along the way. So once we approved it and it was recommended to the Board of Selectmen for adoption or inclusion as part of the budget, the Board of Selectmen met via special meeting. I forget the date, March 31st, and made a few changes to the plan. They decided to reduce the line 4 in your plan, the annual transfer to capital reserve for school projects, from the $1 million that we had shown down to $700,000. That is, forget the numbers on that, but that amounted to a decrease in total capital reserve savings of $66,000 from the prior year, or 4.69% reduction. The other change that the selectmen made was a $5,000 reduction to line 57, which is the transfer to the replenish the open space fund in year 1. So that was $40,000. It is now $35,000 as they in the budget they approved and sent to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance at their meeting on April 3rd and April 9th, following the town hearing, as part of their appropriation process, they reduced that reduction. And put $150,000 additional funding into that annual transfer, making it $850,000 total into the reserve fund for schools. So down $150,000 from the way we approved it on the 19th. That amounts to a 6% increase over last year, and jointly over the past 2 years, only an annual average increase of 1.15%, because we followed a reduction last year as well and transferred to capital reserve. So that is where we're at now, and that is the budget as put forth. So the two line items are highlighted on your spreadsheet. It's that $850,000 year one number on line 4. And line 57, the $5,000 reduction to the replenishment of the open space fund. Because those are savings. They do not reduce spending. They do not shift anything that we had put forth for projects in year one. And the only reductions or the only changes that you'll see related to that on the 5-year budget projections are in the Fund 04 for school projects. Just the total came down accordingly. So that's where we stand. But normally in this process, or at least in my experience, my limited experience in years past, as changes are recommended, it goes through a process of a capital improvement committee reviewing, approving, then sending that back to the Board of Selectmen and then to the Board of Finance ultimately to reflect what their issues are. We skipped that point of the process this year. So we haven't really had the opportunity to discuss those changes or the potential impact as a committee. And that's really the purpose of this meeting. So discussion, I guess. We can start there.
Jim,
Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I'm probably the least qualified to go first, but I just want to ask, like, ultimately what our goal is as far as the discussion tonight, and just in our role as, kind of what our interface with the Board of Selectmen is going to be, because that's what they're the end of our job, basically. So if we discuss it, I just want to know what end tonight is going to be.
And to that, I actually have a question for you, Christina.
Okay.
Years of experience.
Yeah.
So given that this changed since our approval, what's the limit of the extent that we need to weigh in on this? Given that it is the Board of Selectmen, it's the Board of Finance that makes it. I mean, if this doesn't align, are we as an entity on the hook to approve this plan? And that said, ultimately the approved plan or the final plan that's adopted at town meeting or a referendum rather, by vote is going to be what shows up in our annual report.
Yeah.
And if that's different than what we recommended, we need to be able to reconcile that, I think, as a committee, right?
Yeah.
Which is really my
So really,
bigger
it's
concern.
like a question of accepting the changes, sort of.
Yeah, so
No.
I wanted to give us a chance to discuss the changes, decide whether we wanted to act on them. I don't think it's necessarily required. But then also, I think it's it's our purview and behooving to us as the people who generated this plan to provide some sort of guidance and response as to how we feel about the changes and whether they do what they need to for the needs of the long term, for our long-term goals. That's my thoughts, at least. So
Comment, but Jen sounds like she's.
No,
Go ahead.
I'll wait.
No, I think one of the reasons it's more important to do it this year or to discuss it. Do you want a motion before we discuss, or do we even need a motion?
We may not need a motion. right now.
Okay,
We can
I
discuss
think
where we-
one of the things that's different this year, and the selectmen are, in the process of calling the annual town meeting, which will then lead to the referendum on May 6th. But they did that in effect at a meeting on Monday night, but I see that they have an agenda for another special meeting to call a town meeting for tomorrow morning at 11. So since they're going to be doing that, and in that call or in that agenda, it lists the CIP plan as a separate referendum question. I think it's even more important for us to sort of say, we're good with this, or why we're not good with it, but it is what it is, or whatever the
How,
statement
does
is.
it really? I
Yes.
didn't see that.
Yes,
Yeah, it's on their agenda that way,
Well,
as
it's
a
on the-
fourth question.
It's on the town meeting agenda.
The call at the time.
Right, that's true. So,
It's
So
not, it's
the-
not a referendum question.
okay, I guess I thought, kind of thought it would segue into that, but I may be assuming too much. Cause I don't know all the process of it,
I-
maybe it is just for the annual town meeting votes. Still,
don't-
that's a stage two, so,
I'm not sure why it was listed on two different Board of Selectmen meetings.
right. I think they may be doing a do-over, is my guess, because something was not quite according to Hoyle on the first one, but it doesn't really say. The first one was at 6 o'clock on Monday. And it was really brief, and they released the minutes at 6:20 or 6:30. And then the next day there was, I think it was the next day, they put out an agenda for a special meeting on Thursday at 11 a.m. to call the town meeting. So I'm sensing they may need to do over what they did Monday. That's the only thing I can conclude, but I don't know. So. Do you know, Donna? Okay. She goes,
Trying to find
don't
our-
look at me.
Let's see here.
Oh,
This is-
I don't see their agenda for
Thursday,
Thursday.
it's under
Oh,
agendas.
okay, I see.
And
So
actually, I think a set of minutes for the Monday meeting, I think, is also under agendas instead of under
Yeah.
minutes. So it's a little confusing.
So this is to call an annual town meeting for the purposes of 4 items. One is to discuss the proposed general government and education budgets. 2 is to set a date for the referendum.
Mhm.
3 is to set the polling place, and 4 is to see if the townspeople, on the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, will adopt the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2026 to 2030.
That's what it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's part of the town
that-
meeting process.
yeah, and that that's, people vote on that in the meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I remember it last year too, that one. Cause there are a lot of people who are asking, this last couple of years,
Yeah.
a lot of people came to ask about the, shock absorber concept.
Mhm.
That's still.
Yes. And
still out there
so.
today.
but
So does that
and
mean? I'm so sorry.
Is that ringing bells of how we
Yeah.
do that? Yeah. But it doesn't show up on the ballot. Cause it gets approved or not approved in that meeting. I've asked-
With the Board of Selectmen budget, right? So it's not it's not a separate,
No. So people are voting on the plan as a whole. Like, okay, yes, this is our plan that we have, that we are required to have a plan
Mhm.
in order to get a lot of state grants and stuff. That's why we do this. So we need to be able to say, we have a plan, here it is. People are voting on that and really like what townspeople should be concerned about is what we want to spend supportable by the funds we have available. And yes, in theory, we have a plan that shows that you can do that. But the actual things that are in year one that are coming out of Pete's budget or are part of transfers to other budgets. Those are all included in the budget, so. Those aren't approved, nothing is like set in stone, it's just like in concept of this plan is what we think it is. But until that referendum, we don't know for sure about year one, and we definitely, and all bets are off on all the other years. That's why when people will come and say, oh, no, it was in the CIP last year, it's fine. No, it's not. Year one is fine. The rest of it is,
We have to go year by year because the budget referendums are set up to be confined to the fiscal year that you're about to embark on, so.
yeah. So that's,
So ultimately, what you see before you is the plan that the town will be seeing and approving and conceptually approving at town meeting whenever it is held. And then year one will ultimately be adopted if it passes that referendum. So since the town is voting on this plan, I feel we should at least have an understanding of where we stand, given that it's changed from what we approved initially. And if we feel the changes are reasonable, I think it would be warranted to vote to approve this as a committee. If not, well, I see, we have three options, I say. One is we can approve this and put it forth as our revised plan and find it acceptable. We can approve it with comment, or we can not approve it, and I don't think that does anything. Realistically, you know, if we opt not to approve this, it doesn't change anything other than lodge a disagreement with the level of spending contained within.
yes,
I think it's, I mean, the thing, I think it's a reasonable outcome. I'm glad that Board of Finance restored some of the money in the school reserve. Even though it's not what we originally planned for, because frankly, I think it's a more complicated budget year than normal for many reasons. And they're not really spending reasons, because the spending is at 4.6, which is the best I've seen it with two big school budgets that are, weighing in the lowest budget of all of them, of general government, Region 19 and K through 8 is the K through 8 budget. So it's like 4.4. I think that spending is at a good place. One of the citizens said that the inflationary cost is around 4%, and that they recommended that we have a budget about at that level. That's I mean, last year it would have been closer to 2%. I don't know that you can always match inflation with the budget, but I think that this budget picture is so complicated this year because of the fall off in revenue, the impact of the reval, some other dried up revenues because of big state changes in the way vehicles are valued, and an increase in the property tax abatements we give to residents for disabled vet reasons and different things. I think the picture's just complicated, and I think this is a good outcome. And yet keeps us as much on track as we could have done this year. So I'm pretty pleased with the outcome.
Yeah, I will say, I mean,
It's not a perfect world, but
it's at least an increase to savings. My big concern with this is that it defers. It again defers the level of need to the next year and the year after, when we're gonna start to see much more significant increases. Potentially based on the projects before us that are going to be more impactful. For example, this one, just in this plan next year, we have a $400,000 increase almost. $350,000 increase projected for next year's spending in the CIP plan. That then jumps to another 1.2 million in the following year. that's a bigger gap to hurdle now. Because we've cut spending by $150,000. And I know many of us, well, at least myself, I honestly think we should be transitioning this more aggressively to make it more gradual. And try to minimize the effect of those big jumps. So that's my big concern with this. I however, do think this is likely the best middle ground. With where this is at, given the level of spending compared to last year. In the overall operating budget, but.
I think that your letter is very clear. It explains it to the taxpayers. It also explains it to the people who are gonna look at it next year. And I don't know, I just think it like sums up what's happened, what our stance on it is, and I think this is the best we're gonna do, so in reality, so.
Me too, it's like an historic document.
Yeah.
No, it will help like next year, and I think I don't know if it could be entered into the minutes for this meeting or something,
Well, I mean, I think if it's, ideally, it comes from the committee.
Right.
You know, this is a draft, we can all comment, but I felt it's important that we provide some direction. With that said, did you guys receive online via email? We have printed copies here, but I sent it out a little later. I sent a
Yes.
draft.
I got mine.
Just as a working starting point, you know, to kind of relay the picture, I think it's important, given that the town has got a lot of questions about this. There's always a lot of questions about spending in the plan. And anything we can do to inform the public as we, as everybody discusses this ad nauseum, both on social media and in the various town meetings. I think it's important for us to say something, as a committee.
and you have captured that there's actual decrease in spending. In the plan, the way it's turned out.
Yeah, so what do you guys say? Any thoughts online?
Yeah, I also think the letter is great, and it sums up and lays out the concerns very appropriately. Again, I just want to, I hate to be the stinker in the room, but like I think it has to go to the Board of Selectmen and they need to disseminate it. I agree wholeheartedly with including it in our minutes because it's part of this meeting today, but as far as the delivery, I don't think we have a mechanism to get it to the public. I think our venue is through the selectmen.
All our venues through the town. I mean, if it's a letter of the committee, we can issue it as a letter of the committee. It's not a letter of the selectmen. It's not
Right.
their opinion.
Right.
It
It's
is,
not.
it's their portal though.
It is.
They have rules of what can go
Yeah.
out, but I think this is within the rules.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would recommend too that I know that we don't necessarily, you know, break rules or report news exactly in the in the quarterly publication that you can see on the website. But I wouldn't mind seeing this in there because I think this is, you know, at least it explains a piece of a very complicated budget year. You know, wouldn't hurt to have a similar statement on the, you know, the town budget side.
So to kind of, I guess resolve or speak to your concerns, Jen, similar to what we did when we issued a letter earlier in the season. That we posted on the CIP webpage on the town, but then we asked Peter in the town to push it both on the town's
E-blast thing?
e-blast, well, it never made it to the e-blast,
Oh, it
but it
did.
did make it to the social media, you know, it made it as a post from the town of Wellington. And I think we follow those same, I guess, procedures and requests that we push it out to them and ask them to, you know, publish it as a recommendation.
Mhm.
Or as a statement from the CIP committee,
Mhm.
because we are advisory, but we are our own entity. We move our own minutes, we move, it's,
Yeah,
um. So,
I think letting people easy, you get it out to the better. So I think I'm gonna make a motion that we empower our chair to sign this letter and send it on our behalf. And send it to the selectmen and the Board of Finance. And request that the Board of Selectmen share it on their email blast system and on social media
Should it be on the town website?
and the town website. Where else?
Well, I said the word,
The word.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know when the next publishing, yeah.
And include it in the CIP
Annual,
and report, the.
yeah, it's the annual report, so.
Yes,
It'll, I think language in it will be a part of that.
Yeah.
Upfront narrative description perhaps.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten there yet because we don't have a town adopted plan, so,
great.
okay,
I'll second that.
And that'll be attached to the minutes of this meeting.
That's right.
Okay, so
Okay,
to recap, I'm gonna second that, but then ask you to recap the distribution method. So email, social
email,
media,
social media, website,
yeah,
Wellington Word if applicable, the annual report. And the minutes of this meeting,
Very comprehensive,
yeah.
at the end of the day, too.
I just want to make sure that the motion I hear is what, like, we're sending it to the selectmen and asking them to do all that stuff.
Yeah, because they're the only ones who really can.
yeah, we're approving
And we are
the ability to send it to them and ask. them to
advisors
push it
to
out.
them,
Okay.
so it makes sense.
Ideally, the Board of Finance would be doing the same exact thing.
Tried that last year and we,
Yeah, it's not worth our time or energy to talk about that, but, should be happening the same way.
To, you mean, as far as
There should be a letter like this.
disseminating this,
There
or
should be a-
doing their own?
There should be, yes, there should be a letter like this that explains the entire thing,
Right.
but it's not gonna happen, and we've been told that, so I'm not gonna waste my time this year.
any other further discussion on that motion?
Thank you for doing this, Jim.
Yes, thank you.
All right, hearing none, we'll just do a roll call. I'll note. Jeremy, can you hear us okay? Because you came in at 7:16 for the record.
Yes, I can hear you fine. I'm still driving, that's all.
Beautiful. I'm gonna give Peter one more shot before we vote too. Peter. Can you hear us or are you just listening in? All right, no word from Peter, but we're gonna do a roll call anyway. Myself, James Marshall, aye.
Steph Summers, I.
Christina Milos, aye.
Jen,
And Niku, aye.
Jeremy,
Jeremy,
I'm gonna abstain because I have not read the letter. I'm sorry.
that's fair.
Melissa.
And Melissa,
Yes,
all right. 5 yeses, 1 abstention, and, oh, Peter, last chance. And no word from Peter. All right, so I will execute that and get that out to everybody. And that's the response. So then it comes to the matter of this plan. Do we want to vote to approve this plan? Are there any other further discussions as modified by the Board of Finance? Go online, since I think we've all talked about it in the room already.
No, I mean, the only thing that we might have to do sometimes, but I don't think we have to do this year, is worry about the out years, so if the cut was made, that
What?
does impact an out year thing.
That was, I
It doesn't-
hesitated whether I was gonna bring that up, because out years don't affect what was put forth, what's in the budget.
Right,
And do we think that there's the changes made
so the
Should
change, yeah, the change.
warrant a change to any of the out years, for example, year 2, 3, 4? To compensate for,
Well, I think for now, the math works, right? Like we're putting enough in reserve,
well, the math, like, the change doesn't actually impact. Because it came out of the school fund.
yeah,
It doesn't actually
We don't have a
impact the
real
ability
number
to
for that.
pay for what's in year 2.
yeah, so if we had a real number for the school and we were saying, okay, we need to have 3 million set aside by year
Correct.
3, and now we're gonna be short, that's one thing, but that's not how it is,
Mhm.
so.
The only other thought on that again is. Year 1 to year 2, in this plan is. 340 to call it 342,000 and change,
Mhm.
the jump. Next year is proposed, that obviously can be subject to change. In spending, and then it jumps up to a 1.375 approximately $1 million.
But maybe by then we'll know what's going on and we can use some of the funds saved to offset that.
Yep, I think I'm okay with that.
Mm.
But it was worth discussing.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Online, any other thoughts? You think we're good as, don't touch it other than what was done? All right, so do we want to make a motion to approve the updated plan?
So moved.
And second,
All right. Any further discussion?
So I
Hearing.
just have one question. I just have
Sure.
one question. So it's just that the deduction of the 150,000 out of that, correct?
The 150,000 and
Yes.
5,000 out of the transfer to the open space fund, it went from 40,000 to 35,000, Jeremy.
Yeah, so it's just like it was last time, like it was last
Yeah.
time.
It's just reflecting the changes, made by the Board of Finance at their meeting. At appropriations,
Yep, understood. I remember.
all right. All right, no further discussion, all those in favor, we'll do roll call again. Christina,
Christina Milos, aye.
Steph,
Steph Summers, aye.
myself, James Marshall, I'm an aye. Jen,
Aye.
Jeremy? Oh, sorry, Melissa, you beat me to it.
Sorry.
Jeremy,
Melissa for I, sorry.
Aye.
Peter, you have your hand raised, can you speak?
Oh.
He has his hand down. All right,
Does he-
Peter,
Can he unmute, say, see that?
I don't think I can,
Yeah.
you don't know what I actually think
Okay.
about, but you can't. All right, so that's 6 ayes. We have approved the plan, that'll make the report easier, because if we should approve the plan, it'll go in it, assuming it gets passed.
Mhm.
All right, so next up is annual report coordination. We talked about it a little bit. So all of this is summarized in an annual report. It's been a fairly consistent format for more than a decade, as posted online. But we should, we can't really finalize it until we have an approved plan and we can identify what the final level of expenditures. With that said, I do think we want to discuss it as a committee. I am hoping to have a draft available for our May meeting. So that at least we can all discuss kind of where it's headed. We can see some of this potential language in the explanatory text up front. And also, I think it's probably worth identifying things that aren't in the plan, that are in the out years that we see forthcoming, as I don't recall us doing that too much in the years past. We have a lot of things that are unfunded in the plan or that were removed from the plan, those are identified usually.
Yes,
But not something that we haven't even started to plan for yet.
right, yeah, we haven't put those things in.
So I think those are important, but I want you guys all to have a chance to read, participate in its drafting. of the templates so that we can all come to a report that our names are all gonna be on, so. Sound like a plan? I will do my best for May. We'll see how that goes. Of course, if we don't pass a referendum, that may push out before we finalize the thing anyway.
Yeah.
All right? Good night, Christina. Any other thoughts or comments before we move on to president to speak? Thank you guys very much for hopping on today and for making the time to get in during a school vacation week.
Yeah.
For this special meeting and to try to button up the process and kind of aid the effort in getting a hopefully successful referendum passed that maintains at least this level of spending for the capital improvement program. All right, with that said, moving on, present to speak. There is still nobody in the room. So if there's anybody online that would like to speak, please raise your hand and identify yourself for the record. Going once, going twice. Thank you for joining and listening at any rate. So with that said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Nobody.
Sorry, Christine, I was looking at you, Christine, and you were yawning. Steph moved it, we'll give it to Melissa. Melissa seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the time. Let me see it. I just hit end and it goes to that, right?